Now let's push the pause button. What is Moses here? Moses is a murderer. Moses killed a dude, hid his body in the sand, and went on like business as normal. Came out the next day, went home, slept, got a good night's sleep. Who knows what he did? I don't know what he did. Comes out the next day to continue observing his brethren, the Hebrews. And what's he going to do? You know, are you going to lead them then? Turns out Moses had an unintegrated shadow. Moses was capable of killing a person at the wrong time and had not integrated his shadow to basically kill at the right time, above board. Self-defense, justified war, something like that. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses, but Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Now, spoiler alert, in case you don't know the story. Moses is gone for 40 years. 40 years. Now let's push the fast forward button. How am I going to do that? I'm going to search for the word meek. And I want you to watch what happens. The very first one to pop up, meek, is Numbers chapter 12, verses 3 through 4. First time meek shows up in your Bible. And look who it's about. It is about Moses. Now the man Moses was very meek, above all the men which are upon the face of the earth. Does this mean Moses was weak? No. Moses is apparently capable of killing a dude, not weak. Before Moses dies, the Bible says his natural force was not abated, which basically means he's still able to have kids, okay? He's not weak, but he's meek. Something happened, and I'm going to tell you this. It took 40 years, okay? So when Moses comes back, he's transformed. He's gone on the top of Mount Sinai. He has dealt directly with God. He's seen the burning bush. Take your shoes from off your feet. This is holy ground. He says, I am that I am, and I've got a job for you. I want you to go do X, Y, Z. So when Moses comes back, okay, Moses comes back kind of like a person carrying concealed. Now he is meek. He was not meek before, but Moses knows if I get provoked enough, I'm capable of killing me a fool. You see? I will kill a fool. If things get out of hand, if things escalate, I can kill somebody. I've done it before. I know I can do it again. It is now part of who I am. I will kill me a fool if I need to. But I'm not going to do it at the wrong time. What made Moses the meekest man on the earth at that point, he wasn't before, was that he knew what kind of evil he was capable of. I am capable of murder. So instead of rejecting that and putting that off into some place of denial, like I've repented of this and I will never do it again, that's not actually the right attitude towards something like that, because that's not authentic. You lose authenticity, you lose genuineness, you come across as virtue signaling, you think you're being a good Christian. To everybody else, you stink like a virtue signaling hypocrite. Everybody else can smell that on you when you do it. The way to do this is to integrate this into who you are. So now, I am capable of killing somebody. This is part of me. I accept this as part of me. In people who have done this, you will notice that their face is slightly hardened. Not in a bad way. Not like they have RBF. But their face is tempered and weathered a little bit. You'll notice that you want to look at people like Joe Rogan when he's talking to people on his show when they disagree with him. There is no fear when he's experiencing pushback. There is no intimidation. One of the reasons for that is Joe Rogan is a trained and competitive fighter. He can handle himself very well. If things were to escalate into something physical, I'm sure he's quite confident that he would physically dominate and be able to stop and if necessary, kill the other person with his bare hands. That's not even up for grabs. And what that does, it enables him to remain calm, not be egoically attached. He doesn't have to borrow power. See? If you've listened to when we've had Doug Gustafson come on the channel, he talked about the psychological effect of borrowing power from an ideology. He doesn't have to borrow power from an ideology. He doesn't have to borrow power from a certain belief system, from Calvinism, from believing that God is sovereign. He doesn't have to borrow. He doesn't have to align himself with anything outside himself. He is fully integrated, and he's got the power as part of who he is. And he knows that. He's not arrogant about it. He's not prideful about it. It just is. He's got that integrated. You notice the same thing if you ever studied Jocko Willink. Okay, Jocko Willink was a Navy SEAL. He's got a podcast too. He helps businesses learn leadership tactics to make them more successful. And he is also a jiu-jitsu expert. And he has been in combat and he's taken lives of people. He knows he is capable of killing. He can kill with a weapon. He's done it. He can kill with his bare hands. He has the skill set to do it. He's obviously visibly strong. He's disciplined. Discipline equals freedom, he says. Very disciplined person. So if somebody's pushing back on something he believes in, he doesn't have the need to feel attached to a particular ideology, like Baptist theology, once saved, always saved, Calvinism, God is sovereign, total depravity, united open theist. No, he doesn't care about any of that. Not that he doesn't care about it, but he doesn't feel the need to be egoically attached to it because he is fully integrated with who his shadow is. He's integrated. He knows what his shadow is capable of. And it's part of who he is. It's in his conscious mind. He knows it's there. It's not something he's in denial about. He doesn't lack genuineness or authenticity. And he's not virtue signaling and coming across as something that he's not. He doesn't smell like a hypocrite. People who are virtue signaling, they stink like a hypocrite. You can tell what they're doing. So it might be interesting to study some people that are like this, who have fully integrated their shadow, who are carrying around with them in a very known way the capability to kill and to destroy and to mangle. I mean, that capability is just a split second away from being called upon and enacted should they ever need it. But they're meek, and they have strength under control. Moses was meek because he knew he was capable of killing a dude, killing a fool. And it's like walking around concealed where since you know what you're capable of, you don't constantly feel the need to prove anything to anybody. I don't need to prove to you my beliefs are superior to yours. I don't need to prove to you that I'm strong. I don't need to prove any of this stuff. I know what the situation is, and if you need to be shut down, I'm the guy to do it. And that's just how it is. There's no pride in that. It's just how it is. I just know that's how it is. I've been there. I've done that. I've seen the part of me that kills other people, and it's now part of me. It's part of who I am. And I restrain it, and it doesn't get out of control. Now, when I was growing up, I'm gonna speak ill of my brother for a minute. My brother and I, he was 2 years older than me, and he had cases where he was very ideological. He had been violent, okay, and I never was. But one of the reasons I never wasn't because I'm any better than he is. I had all the same urges that he had, but since he's 2 years ahead of me, I was able to see the consequences of him giving into those impulses. And I learned lessons from watching him giving into his impulses that would teach me to not give into my impulses. And I also had an example of a father who did not give in to impulses to do things like that. So I had an example on both sides right in front of me, and I knew that both of those were part of who I was, and it was up to me to balance those. Okay? So thankfully, I never gave in to the impulses like my brother did. On the other side, you also want to make sure that just because you're not giving into violent impulses, that you don't become a pushover either. So there's that balance there that you have to learn to deal with. And this is a talk that I was just having with my two youngest kids yesterday after the altercation that they had. Now, even though Moses is very meek, it does not mean that he is perfect. Later on, Moses disobeys God. And he is told to speak to a rock, and he is a little frustrated and aggravated, and instead of speaking to the rock, he hits the rock. Now, this is a picture of the rock that some people think that Moses actually hit and the water gushed out of it. And there's actually erosion marks going upward in this rock, like water flowed out of it at one point. So if you ever seen the movie, it's like a documentary film called The Mountain of Fire. Talks about where the real Mount Sinai is, Jebel al-Lawz in Saudi Arabia. The Mount Sinai and the Sinai Peninsula is not the real Mount. St. Catherine's Monastery, that's not the real Mount Sinai. The real Mount Sinai is Jebel al-Lawz over in Saudi Arabia. And so this rock is not far from that location. And so Moses hits the rock instead of speaking to it, and this costs him. He disobeys God. There's a lot of symbology behind this. Yeah, it's in Saudi Arabia. Jeremy. There's a lot of symbology here that if this is a picture of Christ's body was never supposed to be stricken twice. It's supposed to be entreated, spoken to, that kind of thing. Anyway, he disobeyed it. It wound up costing him entrance into the promised land. Now, if you look up the instances of meek, so even though Moses was the meekest man on the earth, he apparently was not as meek as he could have been. And so that anger and frustration exhibited itself violently at the wrong time. Again, now he didn't kill somebody this time, but he still disobeyed, and that cost him.